Hey guys, Steven Martinez with The American Dream. I just want to say a big thanks to all our supporters and fans. It's because of you guys that we're able to keep growing. Having said that, please don't forget to follow and subscribe. It means a lot to us. That's what helps us keep growing. And also, I hope you guys enjoy the next episode. Hey guys, welcome back to The American Dream podcast. Here with a very special guest, my brother, Brian Franco, CEO and founder of Meritage Partners.
That's it.
The partner thing just kind of got
does,
the,
yeah. Yeah, we always love to say if it's, you're not a client, you're a partner. So Meritage Partners.
I like that too.
Yeah.
It's funny you say that. When I was in sales for the first time, I would talk to clients, but I would refer to them as a friend or a partner.
Yeah, 100%.
And people would be like, isn't that your client? I'm like, no, it's my partner, my friend.
Yeah.
I think that's good. Anyways, man, I think this is awesome because I feel like I've known you for years.
We were just saying that.
Right?
Like,
That's
I feel
awesome.
like I just haven't seen you in a while. And it's the first time meeting in person.
I know, I love it. I like the chemistry already is awesome. I know we're going to have a good show. So for anyone who doesn't know Brian Franco, clearly you're in the private equity sector.
Correct.
What's kind of your journey, I guess, to where it got you nowadays from a kid to now?
Yeah, so it's a story for sure, right?
Mm.
So it started, what people see about me online is obviously public in there. What people don't typically see is the fact that I was a 16-year-old father. I was 16 years old.
Oh, wow.
I was a month shy of 17 before my oldest son Jacob was born.
Uh-huh.
And he was born out of wedlock, and I had to make a choice, man. And that choice was I could either go this direction and just forget about being a father, or just be a father. And it was I never thought twice. This is my son. I'm going to raise him. And today Jacob works with our firm, and he's 29 now.
Wow.
And he's worked with us since he was interning with us since high school. And so he would come in on the summers, and he would be dialing for dollars, and he hated it, right? Hated it. But he learned so much, because in those moments of humility, I guess you could say, that's when we learn the most, right? But obviously my life goes prior to that, but that was one of the biggest movements in my life. And so I graduated high school early. I was in college by 17 and a half. I thought I was going to be either an accountant or an attorney, and then I realized, neither of them really get invited to parties. So, so no. All jokes aside, I had the opportunity to work with a firm, local firm, a boutique firm, and that's where I cut my teeth in mergers and acquisitions. I did. Well, I'll get to that point, but it was 2003. I was wildly successful. It wasn't too hard to make money in that era, 03 to 05, to even 07, right? 08 is when things stopped. So I was the last year I was with the firm that I cut my teeth at, I was 72% of the firm's revenues at 25 years old. And
you were 72% of their revenue.
72% of the firm's revenues at 25.
You were carrying that company pretty much.
Correct. And so I said, look, I'm getting married. At that point in time, it was early 2005. And I started the firm. We're actually coming up on our 20th anniversary here in May 5th, 2005. And then my wife, Melody, and I were married on August 13th, 2005. And so that was my moment of time. I had 3 months to figure life out. I went, no income, just a vision, obviously some liabilities to make that vision come to fruition. And I just pushed and I grinded. And so we're coming up on 20-year wedding anniversary in August.
Wow.
We have 3 children, Braden, Nolan, and Layla. So 14, 12, and 9. Yeah. Layla's the boss. She's like, I can't wait for you to meet her.
Yeah, absolutely.
If anyone's going to take over this firm, it's probably going to be her.
Really?
Oh, she's just born a boss.
That's awesome.
But yeah, so I really focused on that vision ever since then, and it was really an experience that will be with me obviously forever. But it's shaped and molded me, and as a human, as an individual, as a human, but also as a businessman. And when we were talking about, it wasn't hard to make money before 2007, and then mid 07, 2008 hit. And this is the time in the era where just construction and the economy came to a halt. And, So we are industry agnostic in the work we do at Meritage Partners. So we gravitated towards healthcare. We've done a lot of deals. I've done about $250 million of transactions in clinical labs, pathology, anatomic, because that market was still stable at that moment in that time, and we grew there. But since then we have continued to be industry agnostic, but we are known in a variety of industries just because we have expertise and knowledge and know-how. And of course, you look at our website and you see all the accomplishments of deals that we've done. You'll see now the public information is we've done $2 billion in transactions. I've taken 21 privately held companies and I sold them to publicly traded groups.
Wow.
And we've taken about 4 times that and sold them to strategic buyers, which could be either financial, private equity, or other privately held companies. So, but it was a ride, man. But what I learned in the beginning was I learned some things the hard way, right? And so I talk about the deals we've done, the public deals, and so on and so forth. But the first few years were tough because I would have deals fall apart, deals last minute, halfway through, due diligence, and for a variety of reasons.
That's time consuming too.
Oh my gosh, it just felt like an exercise of futility. And yes, I was conscious of my time.
Yeah.
But I'm very empathetic in everything that I do, so I was conscious of everyone else's time. And then Meritage Partners has one name, right? I had to protect that name, and I didn't want the firm to be known as the firm that these guys will take anything to market. And so I was very selective, but not in the sense of who we would bring on as clients. I was selective in terms of who we thought was ready. And so what we did is we studied the first few years that I was in the industry. I took the common theme and the common denominator of all those problems that occurred in a deal where they fell apart, and I've taken that and we've created a whole system, which we did a masterclass on how to prepare a business for an exit, because we're all going to exit. All of us, even I will exit one day.
Yeah.
And it's just the question is it going to be on your terms or someone else's terms? And I don't want to leave the burden of my exit on my wife or my family. I need a plan for that. That's my responsibility. And so, that's where we started. That's where we grew. That's where we are today. And today it's exciting because the evolution of really, getting our firm out there, known in a bigger way than it is today. I'll tell you a funny story. It's in 2005 was a different era, but my wife and I, newly married, we would get together once a week and we would sit like this, and we would have printed letters. I would sign them. I would pass them to her. She would trifold it, stuff it, lick the envelopes, stamp it, and we would send massive amounts of mailers every week.
Okay.
And to business owners that were looking for some sort of exit or exit strategy or sale of their company. And it worked because all my competitors at that time would do mass mailers, right?
Like
And
email.
it was printed, not even email, just mail, like old school snail mail. But how many times we were selected by a group and said, hey, what was the reason? Why did you take our call? Why did you take our meeting? And they said, well, you're the only letter that came hand signed. And we knew all these other letters were all typed or just mass printed.
Wow.
And so we got smarter over time because my wife's tongue was getting all numb from looking at all the envelopes. So we got smarter, we got sponges and things like that. But it's thinking back, I haven't talked about that story in a while, but doing that stuff really, like we bonded as a couple, but also to know that's where we were and now where we are now. Yeah. It's a big accomplishment actually.
That's awesome. So I have 2 points now, just kind of hearing what you're saying. So the first one, which I think is beautiful, is that pretty much you looked at the competition and you realized what set you aside from the competition was the authenticity behind the brand.
Correct.
So your touch was just handwriting letters.
Yeah.
I love that. And then the other one that I want to talk to you about is, so you mentioned being 27 and you were doing 72% of the company's revenue, correct?
It was 25 at that
25,
time.
sorry.
Yeah.
25 at the time. So what was that transformation? Because a lot of people, I think, in any sector, any business would say, okay, yeah, I'm good at sales, I'm good at doing revenue, but doing a business, and it's a whole completely different ballgame.
I see where you're
going.
What
was the transformation there? How was that?
So I went from from that environment and producing that type of volume to a place where I started hiring people. And I think at our peak we had about 15 folks with the firm, advisors, and then support staff.
Yeah.
And I think about it like I was about 27 at this point. It was probably that moment in time was probably the least amount of money I ever made, but I had the most amount of people. And so the transformation and the evolution of that was I was a good sales person or a good advisor, but I had to become a better manager, a better leader, right? Because, as you know, like we have different whys. Like, what's your why? What's my why? What's someone else's why? Why they do what they do. It's passion and purpose, right?
Yep.
And so what I learned is that I needed to find out within everyone that worked within an organization, what was their why? What was their purpose? I didn't realize this in the beginning. And so we were just a bunch of people working in all these different directions. And it was a very big learning experience for me, because now where I sit today, you ever hear the phrase like, it's just business, it's not personal.
Yeah,
right?
Yeah, for sure.
I can't stand that phrase, because I've come to a place in a determination that everything is personal. Imagine me going to my wife and saying, hey honey, it's just marriage, it's not personal. Like that's not going to go over well.
Yeah.
Like you said too, it's like these aren't clients, these are partners. Right? And in a partnership, it's bilateral. It's not one direction.
Yep.
And so when you think like that, when you think about that, everything is personal. Everything we do is personal. And I think that's the one thing that always resonated in the work that we've done, and the message that I want to deliver, because it really is. Like, we've done deals where, we obviously, high-fiving and popping bottles of champagne, and, it was exciting. But I've also been at the closing table on a deal where the woman's, she was a widow, her husband died prematurely of a heart attack. And she hugged me and cried on my shoulder and said, thank you for helping our family. Or we sold a company last year for a family, and that family, the owner doesn't know he sold his company because he has Alzheimer's and he lives in an Alzheimer's facility. He doesn't even know he owns a facility. He doesn't know he has kids. And so when you have, like I'm saying, everything is personal. And so, like, it is exciting, still the high five and have the big celebrations, but those deals, when you see the impact you make on those families, it's just, it's a payment in itself, right? It's just, there's gratification there on everyone in our team, because we've all worked hard to get them from where they were to where they are now. And so, so everything's personal.
I like that concept, because on the way here, I was talking to my girlfriend, and we were I was pretty much like saying how, as people, day to day, anything in life, whether it's business or personal, you always have to find a way to be of service and be of value to someone. And when you use that, something as tedious as helping out your mom, your dad, your sibling, your spouse, your partner, whatever, that attention to detail starts to compound. And when you take that concept and you apply it to business, and so when you were doing that, what was kind of your method on going that extra mile to really building that relationship with someone?
Oh, wow. I mean, you think about the stress that I felt at that time was, I'm a young kid.
Yeah.
I have the assets of shareholders and stakeholders and business owners in my hands, and I'm expected, and our firm is expected to, transact in some capacity for either exit or growth, right? So we're always aligning capital with those opportunities. And so I realized that, 65-year-old clients weren't looking at me like saying, hey, this 26-year-old kid, he's so wise, he's going to teach me so much. They don't look at you like that. They think, who's this punk kid? Like, I have shoes older than you. And I think someone at one time told me that. I have shoes older than you. I'm like, okay, great. Like,
get new shoes.
Right. But I did, all jokes aside, I realized that, no, I needed to provoke thought in these individuals, and I needed to teach them something to earn respect.
Absolutely.
And so what I was doing was, I would have done that either way, but I really found that resonated with them, and they really appreciated what I was bringing to the table at that time. And so I just continued along that path, but then when you start looking at the world through those lenses, you start to realize, oh, wait a minute, this is this is a bilateral relationship. This is a partnership. And this is what Meritage Partners means. And this is the vision that I left the prior firm from, because it was more transactional where I was. It was all transactional where I was. And that's okay. There's a place for that.
Yeah.
I'll reference an older movie. You ever see the movie Jerry Maguire? It's an older movie about a gentleman named Lee Steinberg. Okay. Lee Steinberg is still a well-known sports agent, and he does a lot of, every top football star you can imagine has been under his agency. And in that movie, Lee Steinberg, played by Tom Cruise, leaves this firm, and he's like, I'm leaving, who's coming with me? I have a vision. And this was after he distributed like a manifesto of like what his vision was. Mm-hmm. So he started it, and that's what that movie was about, and kind of the trials that he went through. There's a lot that movie doesn't talk about, because Lee Steinberg's actually in the same building as we are in Newport Beach, California. Wow. And so I chat with him every now and then, and we really relate on how, we really focus on because his vision was, a client is not there's no client number tied to a client. A client is a person. And so in the work that he does today is very holistic, in the sense that he's taking young athletes, getting them tens of millions of dollars of contracts every single year on top of their signing bonus, and he's teaching them how to be philanthropic. He's teaching them how to be businessmen, and use that money and deploy that capital in a smart way, so that they can take care of their future self. Because right now, the young athlete, they're top of their life, their career, right? But there'll be a time when they're not. You see all these stories. So I really relate to that within Lee in that movie. But I don't know if subconsciously that was installed in me when I saw that movie as a kid. Yeah. But here I am. I'm 46 years old today, and I'm still talking about that story at a movie I saw.
So let me ask you a question now. So that's a really good point, and I think in the private equity space, obviously the numbers don't lie, and it could be transactional. But in this specific case with you, before you do business with a person, and before you look at the numbers, do you get to know the person, or you say, who am I really doing business with? Do I really want to help this guy out, or so on and so forth?
Yeah. So I'll share a story I was just sharing with you, and we're under confidentiality, so I won't say the name, but these were actually a company that was going to come to the event tomorrow. Oh, right? Yeah. And so they had one of the partners had called me last week, and was sharing with me kind of their experience and how they desired to position their company for sale to a larger strategic buyer.
Sure.
Great conversation, and he says, all right, I'm going to talk to my partners and I'm going to call you back. And so the next day he calls me back and he says, all right, we're flying out to California. We're going to meet with you.
Awesome.
So they come out, and as I was sharing with you, they're at the office yesterday, and we went through this half-a-day workshop. And it 100% is about relationship, because if there was just a transaction, they didn't have to fly out. They didn't have to spend time to meet and see what our firm was all about, see what Brian Franco is all about. They would have signed a contract remotely, which they could have done, and we could have went forward. But that time we spent together, breaking bread at lunch and having long conversations and getting to know each one of the partners and the expectations of each of the partners, helps us do what we do best, and what I like to call ourselves is deal architects. So we architect the deal. We know exactly how private equity works, and if you think about it, when you start to unpack all of that, private equity is financial engineering, and it's for
like that.
Yeah, for the last couple decades, it hasn't changed much. It's evolved, but it's still financial engineering, right? And so when you are in negotiations with a private equity group, they're not looking at you. They're first looking at the spreadsheets and the modeling, and what does this look like today? Where do we have to get it? Where's our exit? How do we provide return to our investors on the capital that we raised? So it's all formulaic. And so when you can look at the world through those lenses, which we do, and I do, less now. I'm a nerd at heart, so I miss the spreadsheets, quite honestly. But I'll dive in every now and again with the team. But the point is, we're working these two dimensions, right? The dimension of the human being, the individual, or individuals, stakeholders in the business, and then you have this financial engineering that you're trying to marry. And so is it art or is it science? I always say it's both, right? It's really both. But the artistic ability to be able to tie the individual needs and expectations of the client with the financial engineering is really an art. And so, but an artist can't really go to work as like an architect is an artist, but you can't really get to work until you know what's the vision, right? And how do you get from point A to point B, right? How do you build a building as beautiful as these in a backdrop, right? It starts with the vision. And so we are very good deal architects. And so that is really the common theme and denominator, what has helped us to be so successful for our clients. And even from a young age. So
quick question for you. So with all the clients, I mean, obviously you're dealing with, obviously the 1%. So when you're, right? So when you're selling these businesses, you're dealing with a lot of people, relationships, obviously the whole numbers, financial engineering, I understand that. But in your opinion, I guess meeting so many people that are so successful, what are those key traits that most people have that you're like, okay, I'm noticing that they have, a lot of people have that?
So I think in my journey, the way I've seen it is those that are successful, and there's different definitions of success, right?
Subjective.
But success, the way you and I are speaking of it right now, really, the common theme of these individuals is that they're consistent. They're disciplined and consistent. And so the Brian Franco that's sitting here right now is the same Brian Franco you're going to get tomorrow. It's the same Brian Franco you spoke to a couple days ago, right? And that consistency is key because, as human beings, we're volatile creatures, right? Yeah. And so with that volatility in emotions, things can change, some more than others. But the theme that I'm seeing is that those that are successful have always been or currently are very consistent in what they do, and you can count on them. And so I focus on that in my own life as well. I don't want to be known or perceived to be as an individual like, oh, hey, there's Brian. What mood is he in today? Like, you're not going to get that from me. And I think I was naturally born that way, but so I didn't have to work too hard. But it's and I heard you're a middle child. Yeah, I'm a middle child. Hey. And
Black sheep. There you go.
Yeah, right. And so what typically happens is like we become the peacemakers and the peacekeepers in the family. Yeah, right. We're the intermediary.
Peacemaker there too.
Right. And so I always joke so I have an older sister and a younger brother, Christy and Kevin.
Okay.
And so so I always have I always say that I've been training to do what I do today ever since my brother was born, because my brother made me the middle child.
I like that.
Yeah.
So as you're moving forward through the whole private equity sector, you're being successful, what keeps that constant drive and motivation for you personally? Because I understand business and it's like it comes down to principles and a science, I agree, but I love digging deep into the mindset of people because it's so interesting to understand and learn factors that sets people apart. Having said that, for you in your case, what's something that, it's that constant X factor? Because you made it, man. Like why keep going?
It's really legacy at this point.
Okay.
It's legacy because I have 4 kids, and my wife Melody, and so what am I going to leave behind, right? What am I going to leave? And I'm not talking about material things or money, but what's my legacy going to be, right? And so, my legacy, if I were to, leave this earth tomorrow, I would have left the legacy up until this point. But I had, I think a good way to explain it is I've had a couple really good mentors in my life. Obviously my father, and I had a business partner that joined me when I started the firm, Craig Trask, and he was at the tail end of his career, and I absorbed so much from him, right? And so, but one thing that I always remembered about Craig, and same thing with my father, and there's been a couple other mentors, but they didn't have to do what they did. Of course, my father loved me and he wanted to see me do well, but Craig didn't. And so Craig would always say, because he had has a daughter, he said, "Hey, Brian, you're the son I never had." And so he had this interest in me and really taught me a lot. And so when I saw that, I said, you know what? There's something about this. Like, I will one day pay it forward, as Craig did. And so, so the people that come across, pass with me today, what drives me is I get excited about, okay, how do I help them win, and how do we win together? And when we get to that point, that intersection, it's fun.
What do you think he saw in you at that time that even he decided to kind of help you a little bit?
So Craig?
Yeah.
Craig was older in his career, and he didn't, he would work with clients, and he was fantastic, but he didn't want to go sell himself or go get those clients, right? So we were very good, and I was very good at bringing those clients to a meeting or to a call or whatever it may be, right? And so he saw that drive in me, and obviously we were winning together, and so it went in both directions, right? We really helped each other. But I think that's what he saw. I should ask him.
The drive, the hunger.
Yeah, the drive and the hunger, and he knew that, I believe he knew that I was focused on my family, I was focused on the firm, and but he's since retired. Before he retired, he was racing Porsches all the time, and had a great time. He still loves Porsches, but he's a good guy. But so now that I have people in my firm today, I want to see them succeed as well, right? And someone once told me it's we all have to eat, but eating at the table is pretty lonely. Eating at the table with others is enjoyable. And it was actually a client of mine, Ray is his name. And that was probably the best illustration I could think to use right now to explain kind of what drives me. I like winning together. I like eating at the table with others, and celebrating those things.
How important, I guess, through the trajectory of that was to kind of be a student through it all, because I think a lot of people don't really listen. Would you say at that point in your life when you had your mentors, you were being adaptable and learning and willing to change?
I was willing to do anything, right? I mean, within reason.
Yeah,
right?
for sure,
but,
for sure. Yeah.
I was willing to whatever it takes,
yeah.
right? Whatever it takes. If it was early mornings, late nights, whatever it was, and even to the point where I'll back up a little bit, but my father had 2 bad injuries at a young age. I was 20 years old, in around plus or minus. And my father now, he's in and out of a wheelchair, and it's hard to watch, at times, because it's your dad, and you remember your dad is like just out and about. But he's got amazing heart, loves his family. But with that said, though, I kind of lost track. But with my father, he's taught me a lot. I remember him always telling the story how at 10 years old I could recite to you how an escrow transaction on a sale of a house would go.
You could do it at 10, or he could do it at 10?
I could do it at 10.
Wow.
And he was so proud of me because of that. But I just learned. You asked how did I learn? I was a sponge. I've always learned through osmosis. And so at 10 years old, I would go with him. I would want to go with him to meetings, and so I would go and I would just listen. And so one day I would just recited, like, hey son, how do you buy a house? I'm like, well, first you have to negotiate, and you get the deposit, and you open escrow, and he's like, he was so proud of that.
Yeah, I love that. That's
he's so
awesome.
proud of it. But I just and it just reminds me though, like, kids listen, like, so
that's very true.
So we got to be careful and mindful of what we say, especially with my kids now. It's like, gosh, they pick up everything. And so I think we all have it in us to learn and to be that sponge. But I think I think wisdom comes after humility, and you have to be humble enough to sit back and say, okay, wait, I know enough not to know what I don't know, so why don't I just sit here and learn?
That's what, so Michael E. Gerber said this quote that stuck with me forever in our podcast. He said, you become smart when you realize you're stupid.
Yeah.
It's a good one, huh?
Yeah, it
So
is
I
a
was like,
really good one.
I
You
was
become
like,
smart
man.
when you realize you're stupid.
Yeah, and then he was like, "Do you understand?" I was like, "No." I was like, "There you go, you get it now." So that was one.
That's kind of the same, yeah.
You know, I agree 100%. And you've been married for, you said, coming up 25 or 20?
20 years,
20 years.
in August.
So those 20 years, I always like to talk about partners in that case too, because
Yeah.
I think that's a very big factor that people kind of overlook at sometimes. How important was your wife throughout the whole trajectory of everything?
Oh, so important. I mean, like I said, we're stuffing envelopes at a kitchen table in the beginning.
Mm-hmm.
She's a teacher by trade. She went to school to be a teacher. She taught for second grade for a couple of years, and then we started the family. But it's like there are, we go throughout our day. We make a million decisions a day. But when the day's over and we're talking and reflecting on the day, I go to her and, hey, here's something I can't figure out. Let me tell you the story. Mm-hmm. Or here's something I figured out, but I have two options. Which one do you like? Mm-hmm. And so it's extremely important that dynamic between her and I, because we're making decisions for the business, we're making decisions for the family, and of course, it starts with us, right? Mm-hmm. And so it's crucial. I mean, we focus we date nights, like just little things like that, mm-hmm. like are so important to start keeping that relationship healthy and alive. Because mm-hmm. I think just like in marriage and just like in a business, you have when you look at if you do a SWOT analysis, right? No one really does a SWOT analysis of
like
marriage,
old school, yeah.
but it's old school, right?
Yeah.
But in SWOT, the T is threats, right? So you have internal threats and you have external threats, right? And so there'll always be external threats that you got to fend off and fight off. But if you are working collectively together in business and marriage, you can minimize, if not eliminate, the internal threats, right?
And that starts with communication, I assume. Just transparency at its fullest.
Trust, communication, and transparency, absolutely.
So as you were building Meritage Partners, the discipline on that aspect of, I assume, it wasn't just all highs. I assume, like you mentioned, there was lows. Oh, yeah. Throughout those low moments, I think that's where, the path kind of slips left or right. Like some people are just like, man, I'm out, I'm done. What made you keep going? And like, how was that? Take me through your mind when that was going on.
Yeah, it's like almost like, it sounds silly, but almost like solving a puzzle, right?
Yeah.
Like the deals we've done, are public and known. The deals we haven't done are not known, right? And so I could have easily, and there were times where like, gosh, this is too crazy. This can never work, but I was right. It could never work. It could never work the way I was doing it. And so I had to recognize that and evolve from that. And so that's why, early on I studied, like I was saying, all the transactions that have failed. We took the common theme and the common denominator of what collapsed those deals, and now we look for those in companies today to help understand, what the risks are, and because a lot of those risks can be eliminated, if not diluted, just with proper planning, right? And so had I quit at that point when I was banging my head against the wall and causing brain damage, I would have probably, my narrative would have been, that industry's so hard. Yeah. Good luck to whoever's in that industry, right? Yeah. But no, I wanted to figure it out, because there again, the firm has one name, I have one name, and I wanted to protect that. And the best way to protect that was to learn, course correct, and then put into action what we've learned, so that does not happen again, right? Yeah.
So let me ask you a quick question, just kind of hearing what you're saying. And I was just thinking about this on the top of my head. I was like, this is a really good point. You're pretty much in the transactional area in terms of helping sell a business, right?
Correct.
Now, how important, I know we mentioned the getting to know the person, but I feel like we're living in such an outdated world in the sense of, everything's just through the phone, technology, boom, 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 boom. Would you say that hand-to-hand, that physical interaction and communication is something that's crucial, specifically in what you're doing?
100%. So I met I met this woman, Denise. I'll give a shout out to Denise Logan.
Nice.
So she was a psychologist turned M&A attorney turned author.
Wow.
And she wrote a book called the founder's journey.
Okay.
In fact, we're doing a dinner with her in a couple of weeks with 12 people. And so she looks at the psychology of those founders, and when they come to a time where they're either passing the business on to their children or selling the business internally to an ESOP or to keep key players in the company or selling the company externally, right? She really gets into the psychology of that because there's so much identity that we have in our own companies, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
And so how do you separate that? Like you can't just shut it off overnight, right? But coming back, what was your question exactly though on that?
Well, I was saying more in the aspect of, you know, how people use technology, but how the importance of having that relationship can help you.
Okay, yeah. So that's why I brought up Denise, because the relationship trust is key, right?
Yeah.
Because we're navigating through, you know, massive liquidity events, and keep in mind too, like I've been talking a lot about people exiting, but what I think is important for people to understand, even younger stakeholders and business owners, is that M&A strategies can be used for growth, not just exit.
Absolutely.
And so we have a case study. We closed a transaction in February of this year. It'll go public, I think. It's going to go public this week. So I imagine this will air later. So,
nice.
But I'll say it. So
Yeah.
we sold the client Brody Allen Roofing, and we sold it to Bertram Capital out of California, the Bay Area.
Nice.
Bertram Capital owns a portco called Ridgeline Roofing. And so Ridgeline Roofing, let's say, is $100 million of revenue a year. Our client was about 20. We sold the business, the owner's late 30s, and now he entered this liquidity event, sold the majority of his business, but held on to a piece of equity because he believed in the growth of the company. So not even 30 days into the transaction, he doubled his sales staff.
Wow.
And I just got a text yesterday, massive storm hit, hailstorm, and he says, we're firing on all cylinders already. And so M&A or merger and acquisition strategies are not just for exiting, it's also growth strategies. And I'll even go as far as saying that, you know, business exit planning is business planning, right? But coming back to it, so that relationship is key. And so, you know, we with Denise Logan, we're doing this legacy dinner, and so we go around and we learn about each other. But like you said a word earlier that stuck out in my mind, and that's authenticity.
Yep.
And so it's difficult for people to be authentic when they're behind a social media account or they're behind a text. Like you don't really get to experience that authenticity until you could sit like this and have a conversation, you know. What drives you? What struggles have you had? Like that's when you really get to know someone, and you have the opportunity to show that authenticity, right?
Absolutely. Having said that, what I'm thinking about right now is, so you're pretty much doing business with very successful clients, obviously. How are you able to put yourself, I know like at the beginning you were doing like cold calling with the mails and stuff, but like nowadays, like what's the secret to getting into that room that people really want to get into? Because you're doing business with different people. That's tough.
Yeah,
Not anyone can just get involved there. What's your secret sauce there to?
Yeah. So you think that last over 20 years, like, you know, private equity and home services has been a big buzz over the last several years, let's call it.
Yeah.
But private equity has been there for decades, and we've been transacting with private equity in a variety of industries for decades. And so, you know, why now, right? Well, why now in home services is because home services is explosive. It's a growing segment in our economy. And so there's studies and white papers that have been done that says, no, this is the next best thing. And so, of course, private equity naturally is deploying capital into these markets, into these, and there's subsets of construction. You have home, you have commercial, you have industrial, so on and so forth. So what really gets our name out there is that, yes, the amount of volume of transactions we've done, but the private equity groups that we're dealing with today are the same private equity groups that we sold healthcare companies to, software companies to.
So building that relationship, that long-term longevity plan, that's what really takes it to that next level.
And remember, I was saying how we didn't want to be known as the firm that that Meritage Partners, they bring anything to market, because the thing is, though, we're one of the few industries where the faster and quicker we get rid of a client, the better.
That's true.
Like, who could say that, right?
Yeah, yeah.
And I don't want to say get rid of them. Like, no, we want to close the transaction. We have lifelong relationships with these clients. They become your best friends. I mean, it's like I got invited at the end of May. I'm doing a rim to rim to rim hike in the Grand Canyon. It's a 2-day hike, 11,000 feet of elevation gain.
Oh, wow.
And I was invited by a client we closed a deal with earlier this year.
Yeah.
And that company hasn't announced yet, but it was a Portco Blackstone, and Blackstone is a well-known equity group. And so, but I think it really comes down to just to what you were saying earlier, being authentic, helping people understand something they don't understand, provoke thought in them, and help them navigate through, either this growth strategy or liquidity event or a combination thereof. And so when you show up that way consistently, people, they gravitate towards that. And I think that I really think that's a big contributor to our success as a firm, right? And so that's what I would say.
What would you give the top 3 traits that someone needs to have to kind of give you that factor to stand out and be successful?
Yeah, so consistency, discipline, right, and then purpose, right. I think I learned a lot of my discipline from, I used to do triathlons and marathons and centuries on a bike, and we used to have this phrase, because when you're on a road bike and you're doing 100 miles, like, your legs everything would be tired.
Yeah, I bet.
So we would always write on with a Sharpie on our above our knee, shut up legs, right? Because when your legs get tired, you're like, shut up legs, like, keep going. Yeah. And so, but it was that sort of pushing yourself physically created this discipline in me that I don't know how I could replicate that thinking back now, like, or doing like sprint triathlons or Olympic triathlons. Like, your body does not want to do it, and your brain's like, no, you're going to do this. Like, shut up, legs, let's go. So I think, love that. But it comes down to that. I think those 3 elements are crucial, important.
And that discipline factor seems like it was also tied into competitiveness, because you wanted to just keep going. You wanted to win, essentially.
I wanted to beat myself.
Exactly.
Right?
Yeah.
And so, and that was it. I mean, and that was exactly it. I remember we did this 24-hour mountain bike race. We had a team of, I think it was a team of 5. Yeah, it was the 5th. 24 hours. So for every 45 minutes to an hour, we would rotate. And middle of the night, and we took second. Yeah. But when I tell you who we took second to, you'll still be proud of us. But we took second
Lance
to a Navy SEAL team.
Okay, that's fair enough. Yeah, you're good on that.
What we found out, though, is that the Navy SEALs they would recruit SEALs, because they would go to these events and they would find people that would like to basically torture their own bodies, to push their own bodies in these races, and they would recruit people. It was pretty cool.
I love that. I think that's a good trait to have too, just being adaptable and being comfortable with the uncomfortable as well.
Yeah.
I know we're a little short on time now, but for any closing remarks, any closing statements for any upcoming young entrepreneur, someone that wants to get to that level, maybe someone that's built a business and wants to eventually sell, what's your remarks there?
I would say to them, because I shared some stories about my journey. I had wins and I had failures. If you're going to fail fast, right? Fail as fast as you can, because you're going to learn something there. But the sooner you can do that, the better, because then it gives you the ability and the knowledge to win, right? So, but then when you get to the place of winning, right, stay humble, stay focused, stay disciplined. There's a lot of distractions in the world.
That's very true.
And so when you think about, your business plan, and you could download one right now online, but that business plan does not have an exit strategy plan in the template. So exit planning is business planning, and if you haven't sat down and thought about your exit, you haven't finished your business plan. So my advice is, yes, look at that business plan, because the business plan is going to say where you are, where you want to be, right?
Yeah.
And it really comes down to, I always say, we're so focused on the income, we forget about the outcome. And the outcome is the liquidity event of the business, whether it's a sale, whether it's a merger, whether it's bringing in a larger financial partner that can help you grow and scale. But if you don't have that on your roadmap, you're really doing yourself a disservice, because you're not allowing yourself to reach a moment. Because if you, look, don't get me wrong, like if you just want to build a lifestyle business, have at it. There's nothing wrong with that.
Yeah.
But you still have to find an exit there, right? But if you really want to keep going, people can sometimes perceive that selling their business, majority or minority, is a piece of themselves that they're selling, right? But the reality is you're really feeding and growing the business to a stage and a place that perhaps you couldn't have gotten to without that capital and that support and that bandwidth of brain power behind you, right?
I like that concept a lot. The first thing I just thought about is how we see it from this angle, but when you see it like that, you just see a whole different vision. It's almost like a maze. Like, you know how it's like start and end, and you go, okay, till you mess up. We'll start from the end and reverse engineer that plan, so you know how to build and scale a business. It's genius.
Have the end in mind, and then reverse engineer it, because when you do that, you're accountable.
Yeah, makes total sense.
Yeah, you're accountable to it.
That's beautiful.
Yeah, cool.
My man.
All right.
I appreciate it, brother.
Thank you.
Thank you, man.
Looking forward to tomorrow, and thanks for having me on.
Thank you for coming. Thank you, guys. I'll see you guys in the next one.